Every guitar tone you just heard was made with a single pedal, the Valeton GP-5. So in this video, I'm going to show you my favorite high gain amp tones. I'll connect this GP-5 to my computer using USB. I'll record stereo tracks, hard pan left and right as my rhythm tracks, and then a short lead track that'll be straight down the middle as a stereo track as well. For all of the tracks I've recorded, I used my EVH Wolfgang Special because I felt like this was probably the most metal guitar that I own. So for each recording, I'd laid down one rhythm track, and then I've recorded a video of me playing the second rhythm track and then the lead track on top of that. I'm using my GP-5 as the audio interface. I'm plugging directly in, and I have my headphones as the output, which is a really cool feature because it means you can use this as a headphone amp as well, as long as you've got power to it. I'm using the USB to power it, as well as being the audio interface connection. So in my DAW, I can just select the GP-5 as a stereo or mono input. I'm also running the Valeton Suite app on my phone, and I'm going to show you how I set up the first of the amps right now. The signal path for these demos is all the same for every amp, except for the amp itself. So I've started with noise reduction because all of these are high gain amps. I turned on the gate and I've left it at the default setting of 20. Next, I have my amp, and in this case, this is the Eagle120 based on an Engel amp, and I've left everything at 50, which is the default settings as well. Then I have the cab. Now the cab, I have a user IR. This IR is actually taken from Origin Effects website. They have a bunch of free downloadable IRs that I will link to, and you can grab that IR and use it in your presets. For all of these demos, I've used the Marshall 4x12 medium. They have a medium, dark, and bright. I've also tested with the Bogner, but it didn't sound as good. That's their modern cab. I'll show you that in a second. Finally, I have the reverb set to reverb air, and that is the default settings for that particular reverb. So without the reverb, this is how the default amp sounds. And with the reverb on, now, I just want to show you the different user IRs that I downloaded from Origin Effects, just to show you why I chose this particular IR for all of these demos. So this is the medium. The next one is the dark. Which also sounds great, but I thought medium had a bit more top end. Then there's the bright. This is just for the 4x12 Marshall. I also downloaded the Bogner cab. This is the medium brightness. This is the dark one. And the Bogner bright. And then just going back to the Marshall 412, that's the medium. I just thought that was sort of all-round best sounding cab for this particular demo, so I went with that one. Also stick around because I'm going to give you a tip how to make some of these amps sound even better. So here's my demo of the Eagle120 amp. So next up is the EV51 amp. This is obviously based on the PV5150 or the EVH5150. I'm not sure which one they modeled it on, but this is how this sounds with all default settings. Now, that sounds like a little bit dark, but I actually liked it for the recording, so I left it that way. But you could increase the presence, and the presence on a 5150 amp is quite, it doesn't do much until you get to the very top end. Compared to how it is by default. That's with the gain on 50, and I haven't bothered touching the EQ. It just sounds mega as it is. So that's using the same cab, the British medium. You could roll back that presence and change the cab to one of the bright cabs. Let's try the Bogner. That's an amazing sounding amp. You can't go wrong with any of these IRs really, but let's go back to the British medium. So for the recording, I kept everything at 50. Retrospect, I probably should have pushed the presence up a little bit and made it a little bit brighter, but it sounds great in the recording anyway. So here is the demo of the EV51. Moving on to one of my favorite amp models on any modeler, this is the Solo 100 LD, which is the lead channel of the Soldano 100. Again, I have everything as default on 50. I have the cab set to the British 4x12, which is the Marshall medium brightness. This is how it sounds. Another amazing sounding amp in my opinion. So here's my demo of the Solo LD amp model. The next amp is the Mess DualV. It is the vintage or channel 3 of a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier. You can see I've changed some of the settings on this particular one. I've increased the gain and presence, I've lowered the bass a little bit and raised the treble. Again, using the same IR. So this is how it sounds. Now this sounds good, but you can actually make this sound even better. So I'll show you that later on. But for now, this is my demo of the Mess DualV. So this is the final amp model I want to show you. It's the Bog RedV, which is based on the Bogner XTC Red channel, the vintage channel. You can see I've increased the gain, presence, lowered the bass, and lowered middle a little bit. This is how it sounds. So this is another amp that can benefit from an extra trick. I'll show you later. But for now, this is the demo of the Bog RedV. I've been teasing an extra tip to make these amps sound even better. It's a small trick that's been used many, many times over in studios and by people who use high gain amps a lot. So many of you already know this. I learned this from Ola England about 15 years ago or something, one of his early amp model demo videos that he did. But it's a simple trick of adding this distortion, the Green OD, or we know this as the Tube Screamer. You put the gain to 0, you put the volume to 100, and then you change the tone to taste. Now, I'm going to show you with and without and how that sounds. So this is with the OD off. And now on. So it adds a lot more gain, but it also adds a little bit more clarity, I feel, and it chunks it up a little bit. So you can dial back the gain if you want in the amp and leave it on in the overdrive as just the volume at 100, and then you can just choose how much tone you want to add in from the OD drive. So here's the demo of the Eagle120 amp using the Green OD in front of it. So now here is the Mess DualV without overdrive. And now turning on the OD. It's a little bit noisy, but you could increase the gate in the noise reduction block. But it sounds killer when you actually put two guitars left and right and put the stereo down the middle as well as the lead line. And you're about to see that now, because here is the demo. So finally, here is the Bogner XTC without the overdrive. And with the overdrive added. And now here's my demo using the Bog RedV, which is the Bogner Ecstasy, and the OD pedal. Now, the only thing I haven't mentioned so far is the lead parts. So all I did was I took each amp and I added a delay to the signal path. So this is the sweet echo. I've got the mix on 17, the time on 500 milliseconds, and the feedback on 30. So I'm on the Mesh DualV amp block with the Green OD on. This is without the delay. And now with the delay. So moving back to the Eagle120 amp, I have the overdrive pedal on and the delay off. This is the sound. Delay on. So there you have it. That's my favorite high gain amp models that are built into the Valeton GP-5 as of this firmware release, which is 1.0.6. Now you do get some digital artifacts when you have a chord that's ringing out, especially with high gain, and as it's fading out, you get sort of like a bit of digital breakup. But I used to get that with my Headrush as well. So I'm not particularly concerned with that considering the price. You can always find a way to edit that out when you're doing a recording. I do want to stress though that this thing is only $120 in Australia. I've seen it's about $80 US in America, and there are deals to be had with these, and I've seen them for as low as $60 US. So they're an absolute bargain. They are a great backup if you have another modeler as well. So if you're doing a gig and your main modeler dies, you can always just plug this in and use one or two sounds and get away with it probably for the rest of the gig. What I would say though is test out the Origin Effects IRs. They're free to download, and see if you prefer those to the standard cabs that are in the GP5. The GP5's cabs are IRs anyway, right? So they're just replacing those with some that might be recorded in a better way. There might have been better cabs, might have been better mics. If you like those, I would also have a look into companies like York Audio and Ownhammer. They also have some incredible IRs and IR packs that you can download and purchase from their websites, and that will also make life a little bit easier. What I found with the default cabs is that there's too much high end for me, and I think if you're putting it through a loud PA, that's going to cut through too much, and you're going to have to use an EQ to kind of tame that a little bit. And I think with a professional IR, that will probably have been EQ'd out so that doesn't happen. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know in the comments, and I'll make some more GP5 content just like this.